Adam opened his eyes. His vision was blurred. His limbs felt too heavy. His head throbbed. "Adam, you're alive," a boy cried in Adam's ear, making his head throb harder. Beside the boy, someone sighed with relief. "Oh, thank goodness. You're awake." "Charlie, Deborah," Adam croaked as his vision began to clear. Talking hurt his throat, but he continued anyway. "What happened?" "You ran out onto the road," said Charlie, awe and horror coloring his voice. Adam closed his eyes as the flashback hit him. His chest tightened with grief. "It's all my fault," he choked out. "What is?" asked Charlie. "They're dead and it's all my fault," Adam screeched, thrashing under the covers in emotional agony. Deborah lay a hand gently on his shoulder to calm him. Adam stopped writhing and burst into tears. "Is everything all right?" asked a voice he didn't recognize. He wondered briefly who it was. Probably a nurse. From what he'd seen of his surroundings, it looked like a hospital room. "Physically, I think so," Deborah replied, twisting in her seat without lifting her hand. "Mentally, not so much. I can ask the doctor to refer him to a therapist if you'd like," said the unknown voice. "Less than greater than. I think that might be wise," said Deborah. Adam heard the person leave. He wanted to tell Deborah he didn't want a therapist, but he was still crying too hard to speak. Therapists couldn't change the past. They couldn't fix his mistake. No one could. Adam's heart shattered into a million pieces at the thought. Irreparable, irreplaceable. Adam was discharged from hospital surprisingly quickly. The doctors had patched up his grazed skin and fractured ribs without much trouble but could do nothing for his heart and mind. But that didn't bother Adam. In his opinion, he deserved the pain. When he walked through the orphanage's front door, his burden grew heavier. Simply his presence there reminded him of his fatal mistake. If only he'd known sooner what had really been going on. He hadn't known, but someone else had. Adam turned to Deborah as she walked in behind him. "If you knew what Samuel was planning to do to my parents, why did you let me help him?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "I thought it would have been easier on you if you still believed you were kidnapped. To give you a reason not to help would have broken that illusion. Even now, I'm sorry you had to learn the truth so soon." Anger flared in the pit of Adam's stomach. "I would have wanted to know the truth. I could have done something. I could have saved them." Deborah shook her head. "The moment any child walks through my door, it's already too late for their parents. It's not pleasant, but that's just the way it is." Adam gawked at her. "My parents were in hiding. And they would have stayed that way if it wasn't for me. People can only hide for so long before they're found, Adam. I was just trying to make it easier on you." "Well, you failed," Adam screamed, and stormed away to his room, slamming the door behind him. He stood there for a long moment, breathing hard and just looking at the room before him. The plainness that he'd loved when he'd arrived felt suffocating now. There was nothing he could throw in rage, nothing to watch shatter against a wall and smile at as the broken pieces rained down on the floor. The room felt akin to a prison cell, just like his bedroom at home had. Adam jumped as the door opened behind him. He spun around to see Charlie peeking inside. "I heard you shouting. Are you okay?" Charlie asked gently. "Oh, I'm fine. Everything's brilliant," Adam replied sarcastically. "It's not like I just killed my own parents or anything." Charlie flinched, but entered the room anyway, closing the door softly behind him. "You didn't kill them, Adam. Samuel did." "Oh yeah, and who delivered them to him on a silver platter?" "It wasn't Santa Claus, that's for sure," Adam spat. Charlie held up his hands, both in surrender and to try to calm Adam down. Okay, you feel guilty, I can see that, but everything's going to be okay. Debbie's organized a therapist for you. He's going to come here every week and help you through this." "He won't help." "Yes, He will. It's his job. He knows what he's doing. Adam shook his head. He won't understand. How could he? Charlie could think of no reply. Just as I thought, Adam muttered, and lay face down on his bed, eyes closed. After a few failed attempts to coax a response out of him, Charlie decided it was best to leave Adam alone for the time being. Adam heard the door open and close as Charlie quietly left the room. The fact that he was gone didn't bother Adam, nor did it please him. It was simply a fact, no emotion required. Maybe he fell asleep, maybe he didn't. But another fact was that Adam didn't move until dinner was announced. At that time, he rolled onto his side and remained that way until Charlie returned. Then, Adam rolled onto his other side, facing away from his visitor. I brought you some food, Charlie said warily, as if Adam might explode if he spoke too loudly. Adam didn't respond. Though he felt hungry, he had no desire to eat. I'll leave it here for you, Charlie said finally, and Adam heard the soft plunk of the plate being placed on his desk. Everyone's worried about you, you know. At this, Adam scoffed and sat up. Charlie looked relieved that he'd finally gotten Adam to react. You guys hardly know me, said Adam. Why should you care? Because you're one of us now, Charlie replied. The children of the orphanage stick together, we have no one else. Adam sighed and lay down on his back. Thanks for bringing me food. You're welcome. Silence fell over the two of them. Charlie sat down on the floor and watched Adam, trying to work out whether he needed companionship or solitude. Eventually, he decided on solitude, so he left the room again. As he went, he said to Adam, "Don't forget about dinner." Adam grunted in acknowledgement and Charlie shut the door. Adam didn't know how long it took, but at some point before the sun rose, he found the will to drag himself out of bed and over to his desk to eat. 3 days after Adam's return to the orphanage, Deborah knocked on his bedroom door. Adam didn't respond, but she opened it anyway. I've arranged for a therapist to come and see you this afternoon, she told him. No one is in the bathroom, if you want to freshen up a bit. Adam shrugged the shoulder that wasn't pressed to the mattress, not looking at her. Deborah sighed wearily and closed the door gently as she left. An hour slipped by before he moved again. Once Deborah had mentioned it, Adam began to notice the smell of body odor that had accumulated in his room. At first, he didn't care. Then all at once, he couldn't stand it. Adam pushed himself up off the bed and threw the window open, then collected some clean clothes from the wardrobe, which Deborah had provided when he'd first arrived, and carried them to the shared bathroom at the end of the hall. The water streaming out of the shower head felt so good, Adam stood under it for over an hour, allowing the heat to wash away the tension in his muscles he hadn't even noticed was there. It was a shock when the hot water ran out and his shower suddenly turned cold. Adam gasped and leapt out of the frigid stream. He stood beside the falling water and stared at it until his brain told him he should probably turn it off. He did so and stepped out, drying himself and dressing in his fresh clothes. It felt good to be clean. So good that when he ran his tongue over his dirty teeth, he couldn't resist brushing them for nearly 10 minutes straight, so vigorously that by the time he was done, he was spitting blood from his gums. He scowled at the blood in the sink before washing it down the drain. Less than greater than. He walked out of the bathroom feeling better than he had in days, still not happy, but at least he didn't feel like a zombie anymore. As he walked down the hallway, Henry stepped out of his own bedroom, saw Adam and beamed. Adam, you're up. Adam forced a smile. Yeah. That's great. Wanna have lunch with us? Henry offered. Debbie said it's ready now. Sure. Henry's grin grew wider, if that was possible, and he led the way to the dining room where Deborah had laid the table with various sandwich ingredients. Adam, Charlie cheered when they walked in. Adam, Mitchell echoed, just as joyfully. Adam smiled weakly in return. Hi. Charlie gestured to the table of food. Help yourself. Adam did so, stacking his sandwich high with the fresh salad available, then moved to sit beside Charlie. Don't sit there, warned Charlie, and Adam paused. That's Riley's spot. Here, said Henry, rising from the chair on Charlie's other side. You can have my seat. Oh, thanks. Adam sat in the vacated chair between Charlie and Mitchell. Henry was just taking the seat on Mitchell's other side when Riley burst into the room. Yes, food, she cried, and all but dived at the table. I'm so hungry. It was only after she'd sat down and taken a bite of her sandwich that she noticed Adam. Oh, hi, you're alive, that's good. Oh, one. I suppose, said Adam. Suppose what? Asked Riley with her mouth full. That you're alive or that it's a good thing. Adam just shrugged and took another bite. Okay, then, Riley said slowly. Then she started chatting to the other three boys, and Adam stopped listening, focusing his attention on his food instead. Once he'd finished eating, Deborah informed him that his therapist would arrive in half an hour. Adam nodded. As he stood up and took his empty plate into the kitchen, Adam decided he didn't want to see the therapist. He set his plate down by the sink and went to find the shoes Deborah had given him. Then he walked out the front door without looking back. Right on time, the therapist knocked on the orphanage's front door. Deborah let him in and called up the stairs for Adam. A moment later, she heard footsteps approaching, but it wasn't Adam who appeared. Charlie, have you seen Adam? Deborah asked as he passed her. Charlie shook his head. I haven't seen him since lunch. I thought he went back to his room. Me too, Deborah replied. He could be sleeping. To the therapist, she said, would you mind waiting here for a minute while I go and check on him? Go ahead, he replied. Thank you. Deborah climbed the stairs. When she reached Adam's door, she knocked softly and said, Adam, you have a visitor. No reply. Adam, are you awake? Silence. I'm going to come in now. Deborah paused to listen once more, and when she heard nothing, she eased open the door. The room beyond was empty, which didn't really surprise her, but it didn't tell her where Adam had gone, either. Less than greater than. Descending the stairs, Deborah told the therapist, he's not in his room after all. Don't worry, I'll find him for you. Just hold on. Take your time. You're my only client today, he said patiently. It wasn't the first time a child had tried to hide from an appointment. The longer Deborah searched, the more frantic she became. When Charlie noticed, he formed a mini search party of himself, Henry and Mitchell to help. But no matter where they looked, Adam was nowhere to be found. Eventually, a mortified Deborah had to return to where the therapist was still waiting and admit defeat. She apologized profusely until he held up a hand to calm her. It's okay, Deborah, you did your best. Some children are simply masters at hide and seek. I'm sure he'll show up again after I'm gone. I'm so sorry for wasting so much of your time. The therapist placed a hand on her shoulder to console her. It's okay, these things happen. Before I go, is there anyone else here who might need to talk to me? Deborah thought for a moment, then shook her head. Not that I know of. Okay, I'll leave now, so hopefully Adam comes out of hiding for you. Have a good afternoon. Thank you. I'm sorry for all the hassle, Deborah apologized yet again as she opened the door for him. He waved his hand dismissively. It's not your fault. Call me when Adam's ready to talk. Thank you, I will. As soon as the door closed behind him, Deborah continued her search. So did Charlie's search party, but in a different way. Okay, so do we all think that Adam isn't actually here anymore? Charlie asked the other two, who were sitting with him on his bedroom floor. When Henry and Mitchell nodded, Charlie said, Good. Me too. Where do you think he might have gone? The other boys shrugged. Charlie sighed. Okay, what's been upsetting him? Was it us? Asked Mitchell. No, Mitch, it wasn't us, Charlie said gently. I remember him yelling at Debbie, said Henry. What was that about? His parents, I think. He was angry at her for not telling him some stuff she knew that could have helped him save them, Charlie replied. Do you think he's still angry at her? Asked Henry. Charlie nodded. I think so, but he seemed to be more angry at himself. Why did he run away? Asked Mitchell. He can't run away from himself. That's just silly. Maybe that's what he was trying to do, Charlie mused. He was running away from a therapist, after all. I don't get it, said Mitchell, but Henry spoke over him. Where would he go to get away from himself? Charlie shook his head, unable to answer. Like Mitch said, he can't. So where is he? Asked Henry. What's he trying to do? Charlie gasped with realization. What? The other two asked. What if he's gone to try and fix his mistake? How? Asked Henry. He can't save them now. It's too late. I don't know what he's doing, but I think I know where he might be going. Where? Asked Mitchell. The last place he saw his parents, Charlie replied. Griffith Council Square. Samantha. Adam didn't know where he was going, he just walked. He was hoping to come across a bus stop, or perhaps a train station, but no such luck befell him. Eventually, however, he did come across the local shops. He walked past the storefronts, gazing blankly through the windows, allowing his mind to wander. At first, he felt no emotions, then sadness filled the void, followed closely by guilt, betrayal and anger. It was anger that fueled him when he caught a glimpse of spray cans through one of the shop windows. He paused and looked closer, cupping his hand above his eyes and holding his face close to the glass. The spray cans were filled with paint, Adam was almost certain of it. He lowered his hand and walked over to the door, pushing it open cautiously. As expected, he heard the harsh tone of an electronic bell announcing his presence. Good afternoon, young sir. The shopkeeper greeted him from behind the register. Can I help you with anything? Adam shook his head and mumbled, just browsing. The shopkeeper smiled and gestured to the shelves. Not to worry, take your time, I'll be here if you need me. Adam nodded and meandered among the shelves, slowly closing in on the spray paint. He didn't know why he wanted it so badly, only that the urge to have it was too strong to ignore. He also knew that he had no money to buy it with, so he didn't know why he'd bothered to enter the shop in the first place. Eventually, his wandering feet brought him directly in front of the display. Hidden from the shopkeeper's view by the other shelves, Adam stared at the cans, inspecting the different colors. There was quite a variety, but the red ones held his attention far better than the rest. It was the color of anger. The color of blood. Less than greater than. Adam jumped at the sound of the bell tone buzzing through the shop. Someone else had just entered. In that moment, an impulse shot through Adam, and before he even realized he was moving, he grabbed one of the red spray paint cans and shoved it under his shirt. The metal was cold against his skin, but he didn't dare react to it. While the shopkeeper was still distracted by the newcomer, Adam hurried out the door, ignoring the bell tone that went off again when he opened it. As the door swung shut behind him, Adam strode quickly down the street, trying to put as much distance as possible between himself and his unplanned crime. When he finally slowed down, Adam noticed he'd ended up by a large community notice board. Advertisements from Griffith residents flashed across it, announcing things from piano lessons to bikes for sale. He walked past it without thinking too much of it, but when he threw a paranoid glance over his shoulder, he saw something a lot more interesting on the other side, a map of Griffith. Adam turned around to approach it, studying the map intently. At first, he was looking for the orphanage, mainly because he was curious as to how far he'd come. He couldn't find it, though, and he was about to move on when a different location caught his eye: Griffith Council Square. It looked like quite a long walk from where he was now, but the sight of the name alone lit a fire of fury in the pit of Adam's stomach. It was the place he'd lost his parents. The place he'd failed them. The place Samuel had murdered him for the mistake Adam had made. He felt the metal of the spray can still pressed to the skin under his shirt, though it had warmed up since he'd first put it there. Now he knew why he'd wanted it so badly. He needed it to attempt to make things right. It was too late for his parents now, too late for him. But if he could just tell his story, paint it onto the concrete of the square, then perhaps he could save some other family from the same fate. Adam didn't know when his feet had begun to move, nor did he know how he'd managed to burn the image of the map into his memory, but somehow both had happened. Somehow, he was already on his way to the square.